So we got this guy now. As many of you already know, with the release of the new Brains prize map, we got a brand new legendary upgrade for Kernel Corn. This upgrade essentially transforms the character we already know into something new and exciting. Now, I know lots and lots of you have grinding prize bulbs for this guy because my XP farming videos are getting swarmed with eager viewers. But now that you guys are actually starting to unlock Shogun, let's take a deeper look into his mechanics. Specifically, I want to know if Shogun is better than the original. So get ready, because do I have some news for you. To lay it all out nice and neat, here are the topics that we are going to cover. First, we're going to look side by side at each of the corn's rate of fire and therefore the theoretical damage output. Next, we're going to talk about their different reload speeds, and then the recoil changes of Shogun's new weapon, and finally we'll wrap it up with some advice on what playstyle will benefit this character most. Alright, so kicking things off with rate of fire, the regular Kernel Corn can fire off a full clip of 52 shots in just around 4.75 seconds. And with every shot doing 5 damage, this is going to average out to be around 55 damage per second. Moving on to Shogun, I was actually very surprised to see that it actually takes the same amount of time, or 4.75 seconds, to shoot out his entire clip as well. However, he only has 25 shots in a clip, so this means he's shooting 25 times in 4.75 seconds. Now, every single one of his shots actually does 11 damage versus 5, which means he's going to be outputting around 57.5 damage per second, which is more than the original. This is actually quite a surprise to me. I would have guessed that with the implementation of the shield, the Shogun would have had a slightly lower damage output than the original Kernel Corn, but no, that doesn't seem to be the case at all. The Shogun-Guard does output more damage per second than the original Kernel Corn. Okay, so with that in mind, now let's move on and talk about the difference in the reload. Now, blink and you'll miss it, but the original Kernel Corn can reload his weapon in 1 second. This differs from the Shogun because the Shogun actually reloads in 1.5 seconds, so it is a little slower than the original. Of course, this can be easily handled by adding on the Rapid Recob upgrade, which is one of the few decent 2 slots that you can fit onto this character, and that'll pretty much negate any drawback from the reload. So now that we know the Shogun does more damage and has a slightly worse reload speed but can be handled, how does the recoil, or how does the accuracy of the Shogun compare to the original? Well, let's just put it this way. The original Kernel Corn had quite a bit of recoil. The accuracy was not good, especially if you were not aiming down sights. As you can see here, the bullets would kind of fly up in a almost fan-shaped pattern. I was kind of all over the place. Even when you were aiming down, it still kicked up a lot. It kind of kicked diagonally every now and then, so it wasn't super reliable. But oh my goodness, does the Shogun have pinpoint accuracy? It's absolutely incredible. This shot I'm doing right now is not even aiming down sight. And if you can see, I'm going to go ahead and hop in here, and it is in a nice tight-knit little circle. And then if you do aim down and pull that shield up, as you can see here, it seems like every bullet is flying directly into the same spot. And if we go up and check it out, yep, it sure is. This thing is an absolute laser beam. The only time it differs is if you go really far out like I am right now, and then go ahead and check out that spread pattern. You can see that it's deviating a little bit, but it is unbelievably better than the original version. So now that we know all of these details about the Shogun, what exactly does that tell us? And I'll tell you, for one thing, it means you are not getting scammed out of your 100 prize bulbs. This is definitely a very well-deserved reward. Now, not only does the Shogun provide you with an improved version of the Kernel Corn, but it also allows for a kind of a whole new style of play with this character. For me, Kernel Corn has had kind of a weird spot in Battle for Neighborville. You see, he's this character that should be played more up close and highly aggressive because he has this wild recoil and a decent damage output, but then he has this bulky frame that is really easily shot at. And in a game where the meta is kind of get a tiny character and float around like that with the Imp or the Nightcap or Space Cadet, he really struggles to be a viable, competitive, aggressive character. But now we get Shogun, and that changes. You see, Shogun has a shield. Shogun has high accuracy. Shogun has a slower fire rate. These are all things that associate themselves with more mid to long range play. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say long range. I would say that if you want to play Shogun and play Shogun well, you should stick to a kind of mid-range game. In my personal opinion, I would almost play him kind of like a foot soldier, where you can stay just far enough away that you could avoid the Snapdragon's breath. But then if you need to get in and be aggressive, both Foot Soldier and Shogun possess that high enough damage output where you can really get the job done. However, if the situation calls, he can also be easily adapted to do some of those more long-range battles, and this is just because the accuracy is so tight. So overall, I'd say he's probably one of the most versatile characters in the entire game. Now, I will say that the one place he does somewhat struggle is in those close-range battles when you are dealing with smaller enemies, kind of like imps. The slow fire rate does not help tracking onto those targets. You really want to be able to put up that shield and track those enemies around with your really steady aim. One final thing I'd like to address, because I know I will get comments about this, is questions asking, is Shogun OP? Is this pay to win? And my answer to that is not really, because you have to remember that the Shogun-Guard is an upgrade for Kernel Corn. Upgrades are designed to enhance the character, and while you are equipping Shogun-Guard, you're giving up 5 full slots that could be spent on other upgrades to improve. So in the end, I really don't think that this is OP. This is nothing pay to win. This is simply a great idea to add more variety into the game. And with that, I'm going to end the video. Thank you guys so much for your support, especially this past week. Our channel's been growing so crazy. But otherwise, feel free to comment below what you think of Shogun, and game on, gamers.